Yeah, and so going back to the HR1, um, like what's going on today? Like where's that bill at today?
Well, the House passed it, and the Senate, it's going to face a filibuster in the Senate. So, Democratic leadership basically has to negotiate with Joe Manchin and see if he will agree to, not subject HR1 to the filibuster, which is an option, or to change the nature of the filibuster for HR1, like make it into a talking filibuster where the Republicans, instead of just saying filibuster, would actually have to go hold the podium 24/7 in order to maintain the filibuster. So we'll just see.
Mm. Yeah. How are you feeling about it all?
I think it'll pass. Who knows? I mean, that prediction is worthless because who knows? But
Hmm.
there's a lot of energy in the party behind HR1, and Joe Manchin is not susceptible to a lot of energy in the party because he's probably not running again. And if he were running again, he'd be running in a state that is just as ruby red as you can get. But I think Joe Manchin knows that voter suppression is not good. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if this passes and like looking forward, like next steps, like I guess what would you see or what would you want to see continue to happen?
Well, this is the problem: is that if it passes, I mean, I think that some nutty lower court Trump judge could put a preliminary injunction on the COVID Act, the COVID Recovery Act, and that could be tied up in litigation for years. So we'll see if they overplay their hand on that. On HR1, I don't think the courts are going to allow HR1 to go into effect. I mean, they could, some lower court could put a national preliminary injunction on part or all of HR1, and then it would be up to the Supreme Court to decide if the preliminary injunction would stand, in which case the bill would not go into effect while it's being litigated, which could be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. Or the Supreme Court could decline to honor could stay the preliminary injunction, cancel it, in other words, and allow the law to go into effect while it's being litigated. But I mean, fucking ACA, which is clearly constitutional, is still vulnerable in court now. What are we, 10 years, 11 years beyond its passage? So, I mean, the right is not going to sit there passively and allow HR1 to be enacted. That's the problem.
Right. Yeah. And so I guess just to dive into HR1 a little further, I know it talks about like banning voter suppression and gerrymandering. So in terms of the voter suppression, like what are kind of the details of what that might look like?
Oh, well, I want to say, first of all, I'm not an HR1 expert, so you should talk to an HR1 expert, of which there are many, who can
Hmm.
go with that. But the basic idea is that the way voter suppression, I mean, there are different forms of voter suppression. Um, our board member, Carol Anderson, wrote a terrific, I might even say, definitive book about it, One Person, No Vote. But the basic idea is that you just kind of use, well, first of all, you create a phony narrative, which the Republicans have done, about voter fraud, and then supposedly, which empirically is not a problem in the United States. It effectively never happens. But anyways, based on this phony narrative, you then pass bills to do things like require IDs to vote, knowing full well that it's easier for white people to get those IDs than people of color. Or if you have an area where Democratic voters are more likely to send in mail-in ballots, then you make it harder to send in a mail-in ballot by doing things like forcing you to get a notary to send in a mail-in ballot, or shrinking the number of days during which mail-in voting is possible, and then all kinds of ways that you can make voter registration harder. And so the way to fix that is to do things like just provide automatic voter registration, and to have like mandatory federal rules that make mail-in voting easy, and that make it hard for, if not impossible, for localities and states to, to kind of use all the clever maneuvers they use to effectively block black and brown people from going to the polls.